Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm gonna go over with you on the PopupKit for your WordPress website. PopupKit is part of the suite by PMade, which is also responsible for plugins just like Elements Kit for Elementor, Shop Engine, just to name a few. Now, they have great plugins and this one is one more for the arsenal. As you might be able to see throughout this tutorial, this PopupKit is working with Gutenberg. Now, saying that is not meaning that it's not compatible with other page builders, but it works together. Now, they went and sponsored today's video, meaning they give me an early access to walk you through how you'll be able to create your pop-ups with the PopupKit, and I'll show you the free version and the pro version throughout this tutorial, what you'll be able to do with it, what templates you have, what statistics you have, and other features as you might be able to see throughout this tutorial. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So first thing first, we'll have to install PopupKit on our website. So as we usually do, we'll have to head over to our plugins and add new plugin. Let's do that. So let's head over to our plugins, add new plugin, and over in the search box, search plugins, you want to type in PopupKit. There we go. And you want to install this exact plugin by XSpeed Studio. Now, in my case, already went and installed it. So the only thing that is left for me is to activate it. Now we can see it already over here, and we can also see it on our left sidebar right over here. So let's click it and then it will redirect us to this dashboard. So first thing first, I want to orient you on this dashboard. As we can see here, we have some tabs here. So we can see we have campaigns, subscribers, analytics, integrations, templates, and settings. And we can see here the upgrade to pro, which we'll tackle in this tutorial a little bit later. Now we can see here the campaigns. Now we can add a new campaign, which will do that just in a few minutes. And we can choose from our templates, which will redirect us over here to our templates, which I'll show you just in a minute. Now we can search our campaigns as we can see over here, and we can search by names. Therefore, you want to name your campaigns by a specific name that you will be able to search for if you'll need to in the future. Now we can see here we have this beautiful table, which will filter out by title, status, type, views, conversions, conversion rate, author, date, and actions. There are more filters to this table, as we'll be able to see over here. We can filter it by all, active, inactive, schedule, or in trash. Now we can also display specific campaigns depending on the number that we want on a single page. Now, currently it is set by default to 10, but we can also filter it by 50 or by 5 as minimum. We can see here that we currently have only one page. As we can see over here, I have only one campaign, which I've tested out before filming and getting to know this plugin by myself. And we can see here, we can also bulk delete if we want to. For example, I wanted to delete this one, so I just check this one and then just delete it. But I'm gonna uncheck that for this matter. Now, we can also toggle on and off our pop-ups just by going to the status and just toggling it on or off depending on what we want. And we'll be able to see here our pop-up status has been changed right over here on top. This is it for the campaigns. Now let's head over to our subscribers. Now subscribers are those people who have done a specific action depending on what you specified in your campaign or your pop-up. Now under the subscribers, we can see that we also have some filters such as search by name, of course, or by email. We can also filter it out further by date, as we'll be able to see when we click this filter. We can see here we can filter it by today, yesterday, last 7 days, last 15 days, last 30 days, this month, last month, all time. And we can also, if you're familiar with Google Analytics or any other tools that allow you to filter it by a custom date, we can do that the same thing over here. And this is just one of those great tools that allow you to customize it even further. I just really like it, and you'll be able to see in the analytics how much they even invested in this, and I really like it. Now, if we'll, for example, go to our last month, for example, from the 1st of June till today, we have the 23rd. So let's do up till this one, and then we hit apply, and we can see that it already updated right over here. Now we click apply. We obviously won't see anything because I don't have any current subscribers in the PopupKit that I've set it up, because this is a test website, but you'll be able to see once you have more. Other than that, we can also filter it by campaigns. Now currently I have only one campaign. Now if we'll have more campaigns, we'll be able to see more campaigns, and we can see here that we can filter it by all campaigns or by a specific campaign. Now we can also export the data, but it is only for the pro version. Now, if we upgraded it, then it will allow us to export the data. The same goes over here. If we want to filter it by a specific number per page, the same goes over here. It's currently set to default as 10, and the same goes over here. The minimum number is 5 and the maximum number is 50 per page. Now, in regards to the table, we can see here we can filter it by name, email, campaign, date. Now, currently we don't have any pages because we don't have any data to work with, but we can also, once we have more data, we can delete some of the subscribers if we wish to by clicking the subscriber subscriber as I did in the campaigns, and then just clicking delete. Let's head over to our analytics, and then we'll be able to see a bit more over here, because then once we have more data, we can work with it and see a bit more. And as we can see here, I have some dummy data that I've just tested with the pop-up, as I told you before. And we can see here under the analytics, we can filter it out by specific number of days, or we can filter out as we saw in the subscribers, whether it's a month, year, custom date, and so on. So I'm going to leave it as the last 7 days. We can see here the total views, the conversions, the conversion rate. Now, under the statistics, we can see here that we have a beautiful graph. And this is one of the things that I really like when companies do that with their plugins, which they will present you with a beautiful dashboard, which would represent more data than just numbers. I really like graphs, stats, and so on, because then it really visualizes and makes the data a bit easier to work with when you see it visually. This is my personal opinion on that. We can see here that under the blue line over here, we can see the views, and under the green one, we can see the conversions. Currently, as you can see here, we have only one conversion. I just tested it out, as I told you before, so therefore we can see this beautiful graph. Now, under the devices, we can see here that the gray one would designate a desktop, the bluish color would be the tablet, and the yellowish would be the mobile versions. So currently, I've tested that only on the desktop version, so therefore we can see the pie chart over here would be only in gray. Now, if we scroll a bit to the bottom, we can see here that these ones are in the pro version. So currently we have only these ones if you're using the free version, but I'm going to enable in a few steps the pro version, and then we'll be able to see more stats over here, whether it's the top campaigns, top refers, countries, and also browsers. If we scroll to the top, we can see here also the integrations. Now, under the integrations, all of them are only the pro version, so do take that into account if you're using MailChimp, Fluent, CRM, ActiveCampaign, Zapier, or Zapier, depending where you are in the world, also HubSpot, but some of them are coming in the future or upcoming, such as Publi, MailPoet, and MailerLite. Again, as I told you before, we're going to enable the pro version just in a few steps, but I just wanted to show you what you get in the free version first. So we can see here the templates. The templates would allow us to filter out, as we can see here in the top bar, the pop-up, floating bar, full screen, slide in, and gamified. Now the inline is upcoming. Now if we scroll a bit to the bottom, we'll be able to see the pop-ups themselves, and we can also filter out the pop-ups in the left sidebar. We can see here we can filter it out by type, whether it's going to be all, free, or pro, and we can also see it by seasonal. Now some of them would be available and some of them would not be available depending on what they upload to this area, such as, let's say, July 4th. Currently, they don't have it for the recording of this tutorial, but I'm sure when you're watching this in the future, they might have them. Now, as we can see here, Halloween, they do have Cyber Monday, Christmas, Black Friday, and so on. So we're going to working with a Black Friday for this tutorial. And let's say we have a goal, for example, grow my email list, reduce bounce rate, and so on. Industry, whether it's a blogger, e-commerce, nonprofit, other SaaS, and so on. And also features, countdown timer, coupons, gamified video, and so forth. We can also clear the filters by clicking this button right over here, but I'm gonna head over with a Black Friday, as I told you before. And we can see here we have some pro ones, but it's gonna load the free over here. So as we used to see before, we can see here we have the pro designation right over here, and we can see the free ones are right over here. Now, when we hover each one of them, we'll be able to preview the pop-up, or we'll be able to use a template by clicking the use template. Now, let's say I want to work with this one. So I want to preview it. So I click the live preview, and then it will load it. And then I'll be able to, if I like it, to import it and then edit it to my own likings. So we can see here we have the image right here on the right and some text and then a form over here. So let's say I liked it and I just want to click the X icon and then import it. So I just click the use template, and then it will prompt me with another pop-up to name my campaign, because each pop-up would be named under a specific campaign that you want to convert your users to become some subscribers. Let's say I want to name it like new test, pain. Yeah, there we go. And then click import. And once the pop-up would be imported, it will redirect you to a specific page where, if you're familiar with Gutenberg, you will be able to edit your pop-up right over here. Now, let me remove myself so you'll be able to see all the settings right here on the right sidebar. So as I said, right here on the right, you'll be able to see the sidebar and you'll be able to edit the content or the style of specific elements, which I'll show you in this tutorial. Now, the same as I told you before, some of the options would be available in the free version and some of them would be in the pro version, such as hiding the PopupKit badge, as we'll be able to see right over here, or close on clicking outside of the pop-up. And the same goes, for example, for frequency settings. For example, you can see here everyone and display frequency, and you can see here that currently is set to once a day. It is only available for the free version, and all the other options are available in the pro version. Now, before I'm gonna head over and enable the pro version so we'll be able to see more stats and more options available to us, I want to show you, for those who are less familiar with Gutenberg, how you'll be able to add more widgets widgets to this pop-up. We can see right here on the left, the plus icon right over here, block inserter, and then it will open us the left sidebar where we'll be able to add more widgets. And we'll be able to see here that some of them are the Gutenberg usual widgets. For example, the paragraph, heading, classic, verse, and so on. And some of them are being added depending on the plugins that you have on your website. And if we'll scroll to the top, the first thing that we'll see is the PopupKit widgets. So we can see here we have a button, icon, advanced image, advanced paragraph, counter, heading, and so on. Now, when we upgrade to the Pro version, then we'll see that we have more widgets to work with. So before we do that, I just wanted to tell you that I prefer when I'm working, whether it's on Elementor, Gutenberg, or any other page builder, I like to work with an overview of those elements. So for example, in this case, the document overview. We can see here the pop-up builder, and I open that up, able to see here our container. And then when we open that up, we'll be able to see more containers, but I usually open all of them, and then I'll be able to see here when I hover each one of them, I'll be able to see what exactly I'm going to be working at. And this is what I would recommend you to do too, because then it will allow you to work more efficiently and to know exactly what you're editing and not messing things and then not knowing what exactly happened. So let's head over and enable the Pro version before we continue, so you'll be able to see the full potential of PopupKit. In this case, I'll head over back, and then over here, I want to head over and upload the PopupKit Pro. I'll head over to my plugins and then add a plugin, and then upload a plugin, and then I'll upload the plugin right over here. Once that is done, I'll just simply click install now, and then of course activate plugin. And then once that is done, we'll have to also enable or insert our license key. So we'll head over to our PopupKit and then head over to license. Now in here, if you're not sure where to get your license key, we have some instructions right over here. So in my case, I'll head over, copy the license key, and then paste it right over here. And the only thing that's left for us to do is click the activate now button. And there we go, successfully updated, and we can see here our license is activated. Now let's head over back to our pop-up over here and let's click refresh. So as we'll be able to see on our right sidebar, now most of the options, or all of them rather, are open to us. As we can see here, we can now hide the PopupKit badge by enabling this option, and now we can enable also the clause on clicking outside. But if we'll head over to our frequency settings, then now all the settings under the display frequency are now available to us. So for example, in this case, I want to enable every visit, so then we'll be able to work with our pop-up and we'll be able to see the pop-up every time that we refresh our page. So I'll leave that one on, but again, all the settings that I'm gonna work with here on this tutorial are only depending on what you prefer. You will be able to decide what's better for you and what you would want to disable depending on your choice. The one thing that I used to do when I'm working on this pop-up is basically clicking outside the pop-up, and will specifically choose the outside or the entire pop-up, and then it will lead me to those settings. So let's go over them one by one, but briefly. So we can see the display options right over here. Currently the campaign is under type of pop-up. We can see it can be a floating bar, and depending on what you choose, all these settings would be changing right there. So we can see under a floating bar, whether it's a slide in, it will align it to the right, and we can see also full screen or inline, which is upcoming, as I told you before. Now I'll revert it back to pop-up, and we can also see the open event is on page load. Now we can change that depending on whether it's going to be an after an activity, page scroll, on page exit intent, or custom select or click. Now let's say I want to do a page scroll. So we can see these settings here are depending on the percentage of the scroll of the user. So for example, it's now set to 30. I can set it to 1. I can set it to 100. I can set it to whatever number that I want to, but I'm going to revert it back to on page load. And now we can see the open delay is set to 1, and do take into account that is in seconds. Now we can also see here that we can manipulate the entrance animation, whether it's a fade in, and we can choose from a variety of entrance animations. The same goes whether it's an exit animation. Same here, fade out, slide in, rotation, and so forth. Also here, we can play around with the animation duration. Close button, we can enable or disable that, and we can also click on and off all those options. Now I'm going to leave them as it is, and we'll continue to our display conditions. Now here it's currently included on all the website, and we can also exclude it on the entire website depending on what we choose to. The same goes over here. We can add a condition, and we can cancel a condition by clicking the X icon. The same goes if you want to add a specific place or remove a specific place. So let's say I want to include it. Let's say I want to choose it on a WooCommerce, and then here we can see it on an entire shop or a specific products brand's shop page, for example, the cart page or thank you page, and so forth. So for example, let's do a thank you page also, and And yeah, I think I'll leave that as it is. And the same goes if we'll head over to our device visibility. We can see here we can enable or disable the pop-up depending on the device, whether it's on desktop, tablet, or mobile. And here we can also schedule the date and time of the pop-up. So enabling that, and we can see here under the time zone, we can choose whether it's going to be decided by the site time zone, which you'll be able to configure it over in the settings of your website. And then you'll be able to choose where it's going to be. And then also visitor time zone. So when the visitor enters your website, then it will calculate the time and date, and then it will show or not show pop-up. So I'm going to leave that as it is, and start date and time. As we can see over here, when we click it, we'll be able to choose, or when we click the month icon over here, able to choose what date we want to work with and what time we want to work with. The same goes with the end date and time. So I'm going to disable that because I don't want to schedule the pop-up. I just want to work with the pop-up entirely as it is. Frequency settings. We can see here that everybody sees that, or we can choose whether it's going to be a return visitor or only on new visitors. So the same goes over here. I'm going to leave that as everyone. Display frequency. Now over here, we can see here that we can also choose whether it's going to be every session, once every few days, or once every few visits. We can also set it to once a day as the default one for the free version, but I'm going to leave it as every day. Don't show to converted visitors, which is very important because if your visitor already converted, there is no logical reason why we need to show him the pop-up once more. And over here under the geolocation target, which is actually great. I really like this feature. When we added a group, we can see here is, and then the condition is or is not, or is in the European Union or not in the European Union if you're outside of the European Union. So we can see here we have some options. Now the location over here, you have to type it. So for example, let's say I want to type Germany, and then when I validate that, it will automatically identify what country do I mean here. So let's say I want to also add another location. So I add another group. So for example, I added, or we can also choose whether it's and or by clicking the plus icon right over here, and then it will display as and condition. And then over here, I can do, let's say France. And then the same goes over here. I click validate, and we can see here France. If you want to continue, you can click the plus icon, then it will add an and condition. And if you want to choose an or, then you just add a group over here, and then it will add an or condition. But for my case, as I told you before, I just want to leave that as simple as it is. So I'm going to delete both of these, and I want to make it on all the world. Now, in terms of the IP blocking, there are cool features over here. We can see here we can enable the blocking over here, and over here we'll be able to choose where we want to block a specific IP range or specific IPs. As we can see here, when we click each one of them, we'll be able to click and insert specific IP address, or if we want to use a range, we enable that, and then we'll be able to insert from and to. If you want to use that, by all means, go ahead and do so. I'm going to disable that and then leave that as it is. Now, in terms of the pop-up style, we'll head over to this tab under style, and then we'll head over to our container. Now, most of the settings here are gonna be repeating themselves in one way or the other, but do take into consideration that most of them are you probably familiar, whether it's gonna be width, font type, height, color, and so on. So I'm not gonna go on each one of those pop-ups, but do take into account that these are standard settings that we used to see on page builders. So we can see here the width of the pop-up. So currently it's set to 790 pixels. We can also choose what is going to be a width, rem, view width, or view height. So for example, I want to choose it as percentage. So for example, now it's going to be 100. So let's do like 80% or even more, just make it even better. Yeah, let's do it 62%, so it's gonna fit all the information over here. And we can also set height. We can set it to fit to screen or custom. The same goes over here. We can change it whether it's gonna be on pixels, percentage, rem, view width, and view height. So let's do like 250, and we can see here it's smaller, bigger when we play around with this slider, and the same goes over here when we play around with this slider over here. Let's do pixels 790. Over here, I'm gonna just zero that out, and I think I'm gonna head over with the height of fit to content, and I think that's going to be perfect. And over here under the position, we'll be able to position whether it's going to be in the middle, to the left, to the right, to the bottom, or to the top. So I'm going to make it center, which is perfectly fine with me. And we can see here the margin. Now the margin would be outside as we used to see, not in the inside. The same goes over here. When I increase the margin, we'll be able to see it's squishing it down, or when I remove the margin, we'll be able to see here that nothing happens. Now, when I'm going over all those settings, we'll be able to see here that each one of those pixels will be able to choose it, whether it's going to be M or percentages, and depending on what the setting is, there are going to be different options. As we can see here, percentage, M, rem, view width, view height, and so forth. We can see here also here pixels, M, and percentages under padding. Now, I'm not going to go over all the settings because there are a lot of them, but I'm going to touch on the basics one. So for example, the background is currently set to white. I'm going to leave that as it is. We can see here the border. I'm going to leave that perfectly fine. The padding, the same goes over here. You can tweak around the padding way that you wanted to make it perfect to you. We can also see here the box shadow. So I'm not going to tackle that because we can see here we have some overlay over here. So I think that's going to be perfectly fine. And also the container overlay. So over here, when we toggle that on, you can see here that nothing changes. But once we tweak that, we'll be able to see here that things change around when we toggle each one of them. I'm going to revert it back and you can play around with it if you wish to, or if you feel you need to. Now we can see here also the pop-up background. So I'm going to leave that as it is because I don't want to touch the background of the pop-up. I think that's perfectly fine. And also the close button. Usually I want to tweak the close button. So we can see here change icon if I want to. When I enable that, I can change the icon, but usually the X is the go-to. So I'm going to leave that as it is. We can decide what's going to be inside or outside the pop-up. We can see here now it's not visible. So let's bring it back to the inside and we can increase the size or decrease the size as we want to. Now we can also position it horizontally or vertically depending on what we want to. So for example, let's position it right over here. So 30 pixels, that's going to be good. And also we can change the color or the background of the X icon. Same goes with the border when we have some background to work with, and also the box shadow. So for example, let's add some box shadow. Let's add it as black and let's add some blur and so on. There we go. I think you can see it right over here, right behind the X icon. We have some square over here. So I think I'm going to leave that as it is. We can see here it's kind of like floating or has this differentiation between him and the background. So I know it's not the perfect one, but I think you get the point. We can see here also the border radius or the padding. And this is it for the style of the pop-up itself. Now, obviously, when we go over and click each one of those elements, we'll be able to edit them the same way over here. So we'll be able to see here right on top of me, the content and the style, and then you'll be able to tweak around if you're familiar with Gutenberg or any other page builders. The same goes and applies over here. As we used to see, we can see here the title, so we can change the HTML tag was going to be in H1 to H6, div, span, or paragraph. And same thing, we can add a URL if we want to redirect our users when they click the title itself, or show the border. When we enable that, we'll be able to see that we have a border right here on the left, and we can make it on the right or depending what we want to. Now I'm going to disable that, and also here we can see the subtitle. What I've noticed here when I've played with some of the options here, the subtitle is sometimes would be here, but sometimes we can play around and make the subtitle to appear for, as we can see over here. So I'm gonna enable that once more, and the same goes for the border of the subtitle. We can enable that. We can see the border is right over here, and also we can see the show outline, as we can see over here. So we can see we have a lot of options when it comes to customization. The same goes if we head over to the title description. So we can see the show description. If we want to, we can disable that, and we'll disable that altogether, or we can enable that once more, and then we can play around with the width. Over here we can see it goes and makes it smaller or bigger. Now we can see here also the shadow text. We can enable that, disable that, and we can see that it's quite good. If you want to play around with it, by all means go ahead and do that. We can also decide what the content, what would be the shadow text. So over here I'm going to disable that, and also the separator, we can enable that, disable that, and play around with it. The same goes for the style. We can see under the general, we can align it to the middle, to the left, or to the right. So I'm gonna align it to the middle, and we can see we can play around with the padding, margin, and we can play around with the title, what it's going to be, the color, the hover color, text, shadow, margin, typography, and so on. Also the focus title, we can see here, play around with the color, hover color, typography, and so forth. Same goes with the subtitle. So this one, we can see here it's set to black, and also the typography, margin, and so forth. Same goes with the title description. You can see here it's this one, and we can play around with it too. Now, if you remember, I told you the PopupKit also allows you in the pro version some other elements other than just what we saw in the free version. So let me show you some of those elements and let me go over them briefly and what they allow you to do. If we'll head over back to our plus icon right over here, right on the top left hand corner, and over here we'll be able to see we have some new elements such as the coupon wheel over here, and when we hover that, it will show us a preview of what it's gonna look like. We can see the coupon wheel block for Gutenberg, and also we can see the countdown timer and the steps. There are a lot of things that we can play around with. For example, the coupon wheel, drag and drop wherever you want to. It's gonna look not quite nice because we have a small pop-up and then again, we can play around with the width and height and so forth. But we can see here when I drag and drop it to wherever I want to, let's say I'm going to drag it over here, and we can see here there are a lot of options when it comes to the right sidebar. So we can see here the flipper icon, the inner wheel icon, so this icon over here. We can see here the wheel content, so we can decide what we want to show here. For example, we want to disable the $100 off. We can just click the X icon and it will remove that and will automatically update right here. We can see we have a lot of things that PopupKit would allow us to do, which before, let's say 5-10 years ago, you have to make it from scratch. So here it's already built in and you can play around and configure it the way you want it to. And I haven't seen it so far in other page builders. So this one is one good feature about PopupKit. We can see here also the wheel winning options, and we can see here we can also stylize the text when someone is winning. So yeah, we have a lot of things here. Let me remove that over here and let me keep that as simple as it is. There's also one more option that I want to go over with you, and it is to enable the pop-up itself, which will be right over here, right in this top right hand corner, which is currently inactive. And when we click it, it will be active. Now, to save our changes as we used to do, we'll have to head over and click save, which will save all what we've done so far. So let's head over back to our dashboard by clicking the WordPress icon right over here, and then it will bring us back to the dashboard of the campaigns. So we can see here we have our new test campaign. So let me just put the test campaign that I've tested out before off, and then let's test out our new test campaign, which is the new pop that we just worked on, in action. Before we do so, I just wanted to show you here that we have views. Currently it's set to 0, conversion 0, conversion rate is also 0%. The author is obviously me that they created, and so forth. So let's head over to our website and then let's click refresh. And over here, let's give it a second, and then it will pop up as you can see right over here. And this is exactly what I wanted to show you here, because when we scroll, we'll be able to see here it scrolls with us, and then we'll be able to leave our email over here. So let's do that for 1 second. And then let's click the button, give me 35% off, and we'll be able to see here submitted successfully, and then it will disappear. Now, if we'll head over back to our dashboard and then let's click refresh, we'll be able to see that the data is automatically updated. So we can see here one view, one conversion rate, as we can see over here. But I've promised to show you also the other analytics as I showed you before, because some of them were not enabled because they're only the pro version. So let me show you them right now once we have some data to work with. So let's head over to our analytics. We'll be able to see here that our stats are going to be updated. So we can see here our total views are now at 8, conversion is set to 2, and the conversion rate went up to 0.25. So we can see here the views is currently still on 7, but here we can see here views on 1 and 1 conversion. So 1 conversion yesterday and 1 conversion today. The devices I went over with the desktop, so nothing changed over here. But when we scroll to the bottom, now we can see the top campaigns. So currently each one of them had 1 conversion, so this is perfectly fine. And we can see here the URL and the conversions by URL. Now, if we'll head over to our countries, now we can see our world map, and now we can see where the conversion came from. The same goes with the browser. So we can see here currently I'm using the Chrome browser, but if your users use something like Internet Explorer, Firefox, Brave, or any other browsers like Safari or any other ones, they will also appear over here. And that would allow you to filter out which browsers and where your users are coming from and converting from. If we scroll to the top, there are a few things that I still wanted to show you here, such as the integrations. So let's head over to our integrations, and I just wanted to name a few things that you do need to take into consideration if you intending to integrate the PopupKit with other third-party integrations. So let's head over to our integrations, and then over here, as I told you before, it's only the pro version, but luckily we do have our pro version enabled, so we can see here the Fluent CRM. For example, when we click manage, then we can see here Fluent CRM needs the account name and the Fluent CRM webhook URL. So depending on what integration you need to connect, then other information need to be provided for the same integration. So for example, let's head over to HubSpot. Over here, the same thing goes over here, but we don't need a webhook, we need an access token. So for example, for Zapier or Zapier, we'll be able to see that we also need a webhook. So the same goes over here. Now, in terms of the templates, when I click out of this integration, let's head over to our templates. As I told you before, you'll be able to filter out not only depending on the left sidebar, but also on the top bar. For example, you want to filter out, let's say, I don't know, by a slide in, you click the slide in, and then you'll be able to see all the pop-ups, and it will load more when you scroll down, and you'll be able to see all the pop-ups that are sliding in because you filter out by slide in. Now, if we head over to our settings over here, we can see the unfiltered file upload if you want to enable that. The same goes with the download remote image and also user consent. If we head over to our data here, we can also remove the data if we want to remove the PopupKit altogether, and we'll remove all the data of the PopupKit from your website. If we head over to the advanced, over here, the data storage duration for your analytics will be applied for 2 years. Now you can set it differently. When we open that dropdown, we can see it's currently set to 2 years, but you can go even further or even keep it forever. It's only depending on your choice, but do take into consideration that all this data do take some space. Now, in terms of the license, we already enabled that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to show you in this video about PopupKit. Now, if we'll head over to the PopupKit website on the wpmet.com website, we can see here that we have all these options that I showed you on this tutorial. If we'll head over to our pricing, if we'll head over and get started, we can see here that for the time of recording this tutorial, they have an early bird. We can see here that we have 70% off. Now, if we scroll to the bottom, we'll be able to see here that all the things that it gives you. We can see here for personal, for a year, it costs $31.6, professional $79.6, and agency $119.6. Now, depending on what you need here, it will give you more or less depending on what you choose to, but we can see here when we go by a personal up to 5 sites, professional 10 sites, and agency unlimited site license. Now we can see here we have also lifetime deals. We can see here it's quite worth it if you're using Gutenberg. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you in this video. And I really hope you find this video helpful. And if you did, please leave a like. If you wish to, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any tutorial that I post here to make your life easier and much simpler when it comes to WordPress, Elementor, WooCommerce, Gutenberg, or any other third-party integrations with WordPress to make your websites the way that you want it to and solve those problems that sometimes come up when you're building your dream website. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And as always, I'll be seeing you in the next one.